morning, dear hearts. We are on review lesson 86. The two lessons we're reviewing today are 71, Only God's Plan for Salvation Will Work, and 72, Holding Grievances is an Attack on God's Plan for Salvation. So the first lesson, I'm going to change the wording just a little bit like I have in the past. It means the same, but sometimes for clarity, I use different words. Only love's plan, God is love, for my happiness, which would be my salvation, will work. So why am I saying it that way? Because there needs to be a way for me to get to salvation. And I need to truly understand that I want salvation. The word salvation, of course, we know has many triggers for many people, but happiness does not. Everyone wants to be happy. Now, what the Course has told us is God wants us to be happy. So I don't think there's any problem in shifting a word here and there if it brings home the message a little clearer and a little quicker that this is a good idea. God's plan for salvation, for my happiness, yeah, that's a good idea. Because I have been following the ego, and the ego does not have a plan. It has some wild suggestions, and its true message is to seek and do not find. So the ego has absolutely no investment in me actually being happy. The ego will turn me to this way and that way, and then it goes away. The lesson says, I have seen it, looking wildly for my salvation. I've seen it in many people and in many things, but when I reached for it, it was not there because it was only smoke and mirrors. It's an illusion. Now down here in South Florida, where I grew up and still reside, driving on the streets when I was a little girl, my mom was driving, and very, very hot day, and it would look like up ahead on the street there was a puddle of water. But as we would get closer and closer, that puddle would disappear. It was a mirage. This is where the ego comes in. Everything the ego presents to us is a mirage. It looks good. It looks like something valuable until we get up close to it, and then it simply disappears. It was never there to begin with. The ego has no investment in us being happy. His plan for salvation is keep looking. The second lesson is holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Now, why is that? Well, holding a grievance is that I know you want me to be happy, but I'm putting my investment into this grievance, into this problem. I don't want to forgive. And if I don't go into forgiveness and I don't understand how valuable forgiveness truly is, then I won't be able to move through forgiveness and to find my happiness. Without forgiveness, my happiness will simply keep moving away from me. Because if I keep going back to what is not in my best interest, then I will be pushing God's plan away. I will not embrace God's plan for salvation, which is, of course, forgiveness. So if I decide that this grievance, this judgment, this resentment is much more important to me than my happiness, well then that's basically, I'm attacking God's plan and saying, I don't think this is gonna work, or I'm simply not ready for it. So the reason we are able to attack God's plan on salvation is going back to that idea of free will. God will not push me into accepting salvation. It must be my desire. It must be my will. So until I realize that God's will for happiness for me is the same as mine, then I will very likely push his away and stay within my grievances. The line here says, holding grievances is an attempt to prove that God's plan for salvation will not work. because I have invested, as I said, more in the grievances, more in the judgments, more in my resentments than I have invested or even regard for God's plan. I don't regard God's plan in light. I don't think it will work, so I push it away. The lines in italics, there's a couple of them that are very worth mentioning for the first lesson. God's plan for salvation will save me from my perception of this. Okay, whatever I'm seeing, that mirage, God's plan for my happiness will save me from me diving into that mirage and believing it's real, and of course it will simply disappear. And for the second lesson, holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. One of the lines in italics to use for practicing, again, these are suggestions, you can use your own. I am choosing between misperception and salvation as I look on this. So I'm choosing between a judgment and forgiveness when I look at this. That's telling. Where is my mind? Where am I putting my energy? Where am I putting my happiness? In the judgment or in forgiveness and freedom? And we have free will, so we can choose. That's it for today. I hope this helped. Please like, please share, please subscribe, please comment, and please share this with others who also might subscribe and comment, all right? Love it all. And pray and push and forgive and be here tomorrow. Namaste.